Hi everyone. Aside from the orchids that I have in air, such as these two, and this one over here, I also have a growing collection of smaller orchids that are in bark. And before you get all up in arms about how I could possibly have orchids in bark on a site called Air Culture for Orchids, I refer you to the About section of this group. Second paragraph states the group is not intended to be a renunciation of water culture or the use of bark or moss, but rather a demonstration of a variety of ideas and techniques that serve to assure the healthy survival of these specific types of orchids, blah, blah, blah. So with that said, let's answer the question as to why I'm using bark in the first place with these guys. So as you all might know, I started out in bark years ago and killed about half of my orchids because I didn't know what I was doing. But now, over the course of the last year and having the site and learning more and more about cam orchids, I really have a hold or a better grasp of what to do when using bark. So the first thing that you'll notice on each of these little pots is a recording of the dry weight of the orchid. And that's really important because, as you'll see, our watering will be based exactly on that, nothing else. And I say nothing else because this method is purely scientific. You can't argue with the fact that this orchid, at whatever time you weigh it, has a certain weight compared to the 2.2. So none of the conclusions you come to based on weight are questionable. It's either 2.2 or it's something above that. What is questionable, though, is this idea that when the roots become silvery, we need to water them immediately so that they turn a bright green color and then everything's okay. This particular reasoning or methodology completely discounts the idea that there might be water in the interior of the pot that you can't see. And there are two ways to find out if that's true. We can simply put it on the scale, and if it weighs 2.5 instead of 2.2, we go, oh, there is some water left in there that I didn't know about. Or you could use the other method and just dump all the bark out and see if there's any wet bark in there. And it's doubtless that at some time all of you have repotted an orchid thinking that it was completely dry, based on the color of the roots, based on what the bark looks like on the exterior part of the pot. And then you dump the bark out and you find that it's soaking in the center, right around the core of the plant. And that happens all the time, whether it's bark or it's moss. Well, if I put this one on the scale now, it's coming in at 2.4. So clearly there's some moisture in there, and I'm not going to water it. And this Phalaenopsis cornu cervi, red in quotation marks, that has won awards, was last watered on Sunday, February 22nd, a week ago. And I soaked it, and I'll show you how I do that after I discuss a few more of these. Now, what else have we learned from all the experimentation I've done with these cam orchids on absorption rates, how long they can go without water, etc.? Well, we found if the roots are in really good shape, that they can actually go for 3 weeks without water. Not that I'm recommending that, but that's a distinct possibility, and the orchid will survive. So consequently, when the day comes around where the orchid returns to 2.2 ounces, I don't have to panic and say, oh my God, I have to water this now or it's going to die. I know because it's a cam orchid that it could go for another week But I'm not going to do that. I have it on a weekly schedule. I've decided that when it comes down to its original weight, I'll water it, and that's the way it's going to be. The three little orchids that you're looking at here were at one time, until about actually a month ago, a keiki. And two keikis, this one and this one, formed off this one, which was a keiki. And they were keikis of this magnificent orchid, which I had for several years, that met an untimely death due to overwatering. So they have great sentimental value to me. Now these three I'm keeping downstairs, and they're on a different watering schedule. They were just watered yesterday. But you can see getting some growth there. And down here, it's hard to see. There you go. You can see a dark green root. And this should be at 2.0. It's probably at 2.6 or 7 now. I don't want to use this scale because it's different from the scale downstairs, but you get the picture. This particular orchid, or keiki, was difficult to deal with because the roots were spread out almost horizontally to the plane of the leaves. So I needed a container with more length as a result. And since the roots were now close to the surface, I decided to put in a 1-inch layer of rocks underneath the bark. And this one is starting to take hold now. See, there's a new root coming in. And on the other side, this particular root is doing a deeper probe into the bark that's available there. The reason that I split them up was because the mother plant was looking pretty peaked and was slowly getting drained, at the expense of the others. So I put it in its own pot. It's on the same kind of watering schedules as the others, and it's getting a new leaf coming in. But we'll see what happens with this one. Next up are two members of the Potinara genus. And we can learn more about this orchid by using Google's excellent AI mode known as Gemini. So let's see what happens. So here we learn that it's a man-made genus called a Gnothogenus, and it's a blend of Brassivola, Cattleya, Laelia, and Sophronitis. So knowing that Laelias and Cattleyas both use CAM photosynthesis, I want to make sure that Potinara also uses it. So in Google, I type in the question, and then I click on AI mode. And the answer is yes. And then there's always a paragraph after that explaining why they came to that conclusion. And then almost always after that, a discussion of CAM photosynthesis and how that works. So these two are good to go. And as you can see, the roots are finding their way, winding through the bark. And I'm also aware that these can survive on just air because I have 4 Cattleyas, actually Cattleya hybrids downstairs on my kitchen window, which I've made videos about, that are doing just that. And if your answer is, well, why don't you do it with these? It's because I'm tired of spraying orchids every day. This is much easier. It's one thing if you have 10 or 15 of them and you can deal with them, but after a while it becomes too much like a job, full-time job actually. So I can water 3 or 4 of these at a time by using this basin, and the basin is about, about 14 or 15 inches long by a good 7 or 8 inches, and plus it's about 4 inches deep. And what I do is fill it up with about an inch of water so that if I put the little container in there, the water will come up just to the bottom of the label. And then I'll take my sprayer and spray liberally onto the tops of the orchids. And again, you don't want to get water into the crown. And if you do, you get a tissue and just make sure that it's absorbed out of there. But what I want to do is get all of that bark liberally coated with water, because bark really doesn't hold on to moisture well. That being done, I let them sit there for about 15 minutes. At the end of the 15 minutes, just pick them up, shake the excess water off, and then put it back on its tray. And what's great is it's turning out to be a cycle of about 8 to 9 days in which watering is required. And even though some might get down to that original weight in 7 days, I'd rather just wait and water them all at the same time, just for convenience. So thanks for joining me, and I hope that helps you with the orchids that you have in bark.